Hey guys, it's Felicia, and I am so excited to be before you today to basically share what God did for me over the weekend, and I'm hoping it will encourage you as well. We are going from the scripture that says, "No weapon formed against you will prosper." I just want you to know it will form, but it will not prosper. So I'm telling you about the experience that I had flying into Buffalo to see my son play over this past weekend. And it was just like a whirlwind. But let me give it to you. So I scheduled probably back in October or November. I'm such a planner, so I plan like way in advance. I plan to fly out to Buffalo on this past Friday, January 28th, I believe. I planned so far in advance that, once you get actually closer to the date, the airline looks and it reshuffles their flight. So maybe in late November, they canceled the flight I was on and put me on another flight. And that flight was like getting to Chicago at noon. So I was going from Minnesota, one stop to Chicago, from Chicago to Buffalo. I was getting there at noon, and the flight going to Buffalo from Chicago was at 12:30. So I immediately called the airline, like, yeah, let's reshuffle this, because as most people know, if you live in Minnesota and Buffalo, and then there's Chicago, there's like possibility for some type of weather element to occur in January. And my son had a game Friday night at 7. So I was like, I gotta make sure I plan this well. So when I called, I rescheduled, and I had like a 2.5 hour layover. So I rescheduled my flight to leave at like 8:10 and was supposed to arrive at maybe 10 o'clock or something like that into Chicago. So I would have a 2.5 or so hour layover to leave Chicago at 12:30. Morning of, I'm like, okay, everything looks good. There was a nor'easter storm. It didn't go as far as Buffalo. Kind of only went to the Boston, New York City area. So check. I'm good there. There was no games canceled due to COVID. We had at least 3 or 4 games, I feel like, between end of December and January canceled. Due to one team or another, a coach having COVID. There was no COVID cancellation. So I'm like, I'm set. No weather in Buffalo, no weather problems in Minnesota. So I wake up, I get ready to leave at like 6:30. I'm on my Uber app, and I'm like, okay, cool. It's like $15. Let me grab some oatmeal. And then once I get settled, I'll get the Uber. Do you know I got back on that Uber app, and the price had went from $15 to $50? Yes, I said $50. I'm like, oh no, the devil is a lie. So I'm like trying to upload the Lyft app, because normally I always take Uber. I'm trying to upload the Lyft app. I'm trying to refresh Uber. Like, I gotta get there. My flight, I knew I was boarding at 7:40. So I'm like refreshing all this stuff. I was having problems with the Lyft app. And finally, after 10 minutes, Uber came back down from $50 to $15. Like, I don't live that far from the airport to where it should be $50. But it refreshed. I'm like, there can't be that much demand in the world that would bring it up to that price at this time of day, but whatever. So no weapon formed, right? I had prayed that. I forgot. Normally I pray that, but I was like, okay, God, as well as thanking you for everything, I'm just praying right now that no weapon formed against me will prosper. Keep me settled and just let me trust you to get to my final destination. Get to the airport around 7 o'clock, so I have about 40 minutes between the time boarding starts and when I'm at the when I get there to get through TSA. Oh, days. Now TSA is backed up. The line was like way longer than normal. Now people are walking in like, oh my gosh, we're gonna miss our flight. And now, when you hear that kind of stuff, it's discouraging to you. So I'm like, okay, I gotta calm down. I gotta trust God. He's been faithful in the past. Just calm down. So the line is moving. Thank God. The line's moving. So as we get closer, I can see the police or security, whatever they are, walking around with a dog, sniffing people. So they basically reconfigured the TSA area to account for the dog walking through. That backed the line all the way up. So I'm like, okay, that makes sense. Whew. So kind of get through that, get close to TSA, and then I get an email from the airline saying, oh, your flight is now taking off at 8:30. So by this time, it's maybe around, 7:30 or so. So I'm like, oh, thankfully, I can now go get a coffee or do whatever, just chill for a little bit. So I get my coffee, get to my gate. I'm like, okay, we should be boarding soon here. They're about to board us. You can't even make this up. So they're about to board us, and then we hear, oh, everyone could go ahead and take a seat because Chicago is grounded due to weather. I hadn't even checked the Chicago weather. I looked at Buffalo and checked at Minnesota. I didn't even check Chicago. But when I looked at that time, the Weather app or whatever said there was 2 inch, the snow was falling at a rate of 2 inches per hour in Chicago, and it was scheduled to be over at noon. But for the morning, it was coming down. So there was no flights into Chicago and there was no flights out. That's what they told us anyway. So they're like, just kind of stick around the area and we'll kind of give you updates. Okay, so then now it's 9 o'clock. Nothing. 9:15, the gate attendant's like, I just got off a conference call. There's still really no movement. We're hoping to have an update. Okay, now I'm like, okay, I should still be okay. But, people are around me are nervous because a lot of other people had connecting flights to wherever they were going. And so then I was like, okay, God, I just gotta trust you. So around 9:30, I walk and I get up and I walk. I try to go, find someplace quiet because I was going to send my son a prayer. I send him a prayer before every game. I've been doing it since he's been in college because I can't be, right there with him. But I normally just send him a prayer. I encourage him and motivate him, stuff like that. So once I get down basically to the end of I think I'm at gate E11. I'm down at E1 at this point, and I hear over the loudspeaker, we are about to board flight, blah, 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 immediately. So now I'm I didn't sprint, but I was walking rather quickly back to E13 or whatever it was at, and they were literally boarding the plane. So we all board the plane, and I'm like, oh, I should be okay. We're good. Do you know that plane starts circling around the tarmac at its own little pace? I'm like, can we go already? It's 3 days later and I'm still feeling it. Because I was just like, can we get out of here? Then at the same time, I get an email from the airline oh, because of your delay, you might not make this connecting flight. You might want to think about looking at other flights to reschedule. And I'm like, oh no. The devil is a lie because I know there is not another flight that goes out until 8 p.m. tonight. And his game is at 7. I don't know how, but we're going to make this connection. And I'm like, God, even if you have to reschedule the other plane, please, Lord, right? Finally, maybe at 11:15, we're up in the air. So we land maybe a little before noon. The other flight was maybe only delayed by 10, 15 minutes. It wasn't much, I tell you that. So I had maybe 15 or 20 minutes to get to the gate. And once you know it, but God, I landed at like same terminal, gate, I don't know, G1. The flight was going out of G3. So I had time to at least run to the restroom. I didn't get to eat, which was fine, whatever. Run to the restroom and get in line, 15, 20 minutes later for the boarding. So many people missed the flight. That flight wasn't even half full. They were like having us spread out from where our assigned seats were, just to get a proper distribution on the plane. That's like how many people missed the flight. Like, it was a lot. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. But God, I just thought of way back in November when I rescheduled. I thought about all the darts that day that the enemy had thrown through, what was it? The Uber, trying to get through TSA, the rescheduling. And I got there. By the time we left Chicago, literally at noon or 12:30 or whatever, bright sunshine. I mean, you would have never known that it had even snowed unless you looked like at the ground. But it was just like, everything was clear. We're up in the air pretty quickly. I land at 3. I get to the game on time. We're good. I made it. And that just reiterates the scripture, no weapon formed. So a lot of times I feel like when people pray this, like we're like, don't let nothing even happen. But the scripture clearly says that weapons will form, things will happen. Their enemy will throw darts, distractions, miscommunication, confusion, like all your way. But the second part of that scripture is will not prosper. No weapon formed will prosper. So it cannot prosper. We're already fighting from a place in God from victory. We just have to walk that out. And I ain't gonna lie, there were times where I was a little nervous, and I had to remind myself of what the scripture said. And I had to think back on God's faithfulness through every single journey of my life, and especially of that day. He knew how much I wanted to go see my baby play, and I made it. So I was thankful for that. And I just want to encourage you that whatever you're going through, whatever darts and distractions are coming your way from the enemy, they cannot prosper against God's children. They just cannot. They will form, remember that, but they cannot prosper. So if it's a relationship, if it's a relationship God wills you to be in, or a career move or something that God has told you he will get you to, but you're seeing all these things fly in your way and you're discouraged. I just want to encourage you to hang on. I really believe that I went through that whole ordeal to minister to somebody today. So I just want to encourage you, and remember, no weapon formed against you will prosper. Have a good week, everyone. Peace.